It's episode 41. And what is behind the red curtain on this stream tonight, the Barely Alive stream? I'm glad to be with you because I wanted to know if Jenny Lewis came to the Halloween party. Do you know how hard it is to procure a jumpsuit, even at this time of year? I'm not Elvis. I'm not going as Elvis. I'm going as Jenny Lewis. I don't know if you've seen her outside of the Wizard, but what she does. Hey, how's it going? Everybody who showed up, thank you for showing up. Tonight, I just want to talk to you about crazy, scary things, all in the spirit of Halloween. You know, I live on the main streets of London, Ontario. And I'll tell you, you got to lose your life in London, fucking Murder City. Oh, yeah. Everybody's here. Now, whether it's a dumping ground for human remains, it's the site of a massacre, a very famous Irish massacre. We've got some haunted houses and theaters. London is one of those creepy, haunted places that, it's got a long, dark history and a dark past. And so I'm not going to jump right into some of the Donnelly stuff that we were doing today because we had some Halloween fun today. I'm going to jump right into pranks actually because I know a lot of y'all got kids and when you get to be a grown up, hey, when you get to be a grown up, like I kind of am, your kids, you find out what holidays and stuff your kids like, the most. And we found that our eldest he's in love with Halloween. He just loves it, like everything about it. And he loves being scared. So that's one thing he loves. Just like mom, I think he gets that from me. I don't know. So we played a little Halloween prank on him before bed tonight. And it was a good one. So for like a few days, we'd been kind of building up this like guy who's like peeping through windows in Toronto, and we were calling him Pepperoni Thomas to make it like silly. And we said that we talked to our friends in Toronto, and then he'd peep through their windows, and then we said that we talked to our friends who lived in Kitchener, and he'd peep through some windows over there. And so we kind of like built it up like he was like coming this way, but whatever. And then Rob went for a walk to the garage, proceeded to put on like a full like a coverall suit of like Michael Myers wears, and he got like a messed up Jason face mask, like a latex rubber mask, and then put like a hockey mask on top of that, and then he had a huge fake foam machete, and then he was sending me voice messages to Facebook, and they were like, "Oh babe, I'm just going for a walk around the block. I just want to let you know that yeah, I think I saw someone. I think they're walking around the block, and I'm just gonna keep my distance. I'm gonna stay behind them." And he's got these voice messages on, and like our son can hear them. He hears them only a little bit, and like this shit looked like scary. I think I have a picture of it. Oh my god! I think I can get it up. Can we get it up? Let's see if we can get it up. So this is what Rob looked like. I'm gonna share this screen with y'all. This is what Rob looked like at the window. So this is the peeping Tom that we've been talking about. So, oh shit. This thing came to the window, and I'll tell you, I almost shit myself right there, right then and there. This thing came to the window, and I'll tell you, our eldest was, "Oh, Mom, there's somebody at the window right now. Oh my God, Mom, go call the police." Like literally, he's so smart. The first thing he does is, I know, James, like it's ridiculous. He runs upstairs and he goes up to like our master bedroom, and he's like, "Everyone stay in one spot. Mom, call the police." Like he's like so like matter of fact about it. I'm just like, oh my God. So I'm like staying calm because I don't want to like scare him, but I'm dying inside because my mom used to do the exact same kind of shit to us when we were kids, and we loved it too. We loved being scared, and so much in the spirit that our son loves being scared too. So as much as he was totally scared, all of a sudden, he came to the window again. And I was like, "Buddy, come to the window." And then Rob took off his mask, and he was just like, "Oh my God, it's Daddy." He's like, "Oh, That is the best prank ever. This is the, you know what? Seriously, mom, this is the best Halloween ever. And he went to bed so willingly and so happy. So he said we like made his Halloween. It was the best. Obviously, we couldn't prank his sister. She's a little too young. So he loved it and he had a great time. So there's a takeaway from, growing up, and it's fun to kind of have that fun with your kids, especially when they do love Halloween and they love being scared so much. So yeah, I think he definitely gets that from me. But I mean, growing up on the mean streets of London, you got to get rid of those fears. My only fear is the fear of the dentist, and I think a lot of people have that fear. I just don't like people hovering over my face. I love my dentist. Don't get me wrong. Hank the Tank is the shit. He's the best dentist in this side of the town. He's great. He's wonderful. But god damn it, having cavity filled for me is like having like a lobotomy. It's just I hate it. I hate it so much. All those people hovering over your face. I feel like I'm being probed in an alien time. It's just not good. I feel like I came up in a ship. James thinks that it's awesome. I'm guessing he's referring to the prank that we had on our son. But like living in London, we talk about a lot of haunted and creepy places. Like today, of course, we took a trip out to the historic Donnelly resting place where some of the Black Donnellys that were killed in the Donnelly massacre in 1880 are buried, and that's where the resting place is. And some of the headstones are in the museum there in Lucan, Ontario. So we checked out Lucan, Ontario today, and I had a little clip there on my Instagram earlier of me checking out some of the gravestones in St. Patrick's Parish, which I will say kind of helped lead to their deaths. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about a haunted story I heard from my doctor when I was a young kid. We have a lot of hospitals in London, and hospitals freak the shit out of a lot of people. Speaking of fears, they scare a lot of people. I mean, like, hands up if you don't love going to the hospital. I get white coat syndrome, so when I go there, they always automatically think I have a heart attack because my heart's beating so fast because I'm nervous. I don't want to be in a hospital. I don't like it. And now with the COVID thing, you got to wear a mask like everywhere. So you're at the hospital and you're getting a face seatbelt too. I mean, I feel safe. I feel safer in a mask because I'm at a hospital with everybody coughing and hacking all over the place. But god damn, do I hate a hospital. So I remember going to my doctor, my family doctor, when I was younger. I remember it was a gentleman at the time. He's retired now. And yeah, you're absolutely right, Chef. It's always scary to go to a hospital. It's just never, I just find it's never really a pleasant experience. Not for me, at least. Well, he was telling me about going to college and how there are tunnels underneath all the hospitals in London. And it's how they used to kind of get from building to building when they were learning. There were like students at the hospitals and they do the residency, they do the medical residency of the hospital. They're kind of learning a bit. And he said that he'd take these hospital tunnels and underneath there were homeless people, but like bums, he would call them. He's like, because this is at the time, oh my God, this is in the 90s, he told me. They're homeless old dudes that would drink themselves up in these pipes to stay like warm, and they drink whiskey to stay warm because that's all they'd have the money for because they were homeless, but they'd stay up in the pipes and then the pipes would freeze down there and these guys would drink themselves to death and die up in the pipes. And I remember my doctor telling me this over just like a regular appointment like one time, and I remember it scaring the shit out of me. Send the check. Coca-Cola, I love you. But like my mom used to tell me scary stories. This brings me back to this with like bringing a scary story to our eldest and like making a scary prank. I remember being a teenager and having like a Halloween party and having all my girlfriends over, and a few of the girls in Kitty were over too, and they could verify this. My mom, oh my God, we had a boarder living with us. And it was my mom's like good friend, and she just like paid to rent a room. It was extra money. She was nice. She was normal. She had like a pug dog. She was just a nice lady. She like rescued dogs for a living. She was not a horrible person. She was just lovely. So she stayed with us for one Halloween. They got our asses so good. Oh my God. We were watching like a scary movie, and I had like, I don't know, 10 or 12 friends over, mostly girls. I think there's probably a boyfriend over or something, but we're watching a scary movie in my family room. And in my family room in the back, there's this big bay glass window, kind of like there is in my kitchen now, where it goes right out to where you can see everything. So we're all like into this scary movie, and we're all just like scared out of our wits. And we're sitting there, biting our nails on the edge of our seats because it's Halloween. We were freaked out, right? My mom's carved pumpkins. The house looked scary. We decked the halls with pumpkins and popcorn balls, and it's scary. And all of a sudden, there's like a tap at the glass. I'm like, the fuck is that? And the other girl's just like, I don't want to go see. I'm like, I'm not fucking going to look. Like, even like the boys wouldn't go look. I'm like, okay, fuck. Okay, I'm going to go look. So I get to the window, and there's this like absolutely white, like glowing like bride dressed all in white, and a dress, her face is all white, and she's just got a candle up to her face. And like it took us a while to realize that it was my mom's friend, but we were scared shitless. Like all of us were screaming our fucking heads off. And my mom, of course, was laughing her ass off because I mean there was no harm, no foul, nobody got hurt. There wasn't any swear words. She never did anything, bad. Nothing was illegal, but probably one of us was probably outside smoking pot, and you probably didn't know about that. So that made it, scarier because we were like teenagers, late teens, like 17, 18. Because if I smoked pot, yeah, I would have been that age. Oh yeah, for sure. But it's it's scary. Like Polish families have this unnatural obsession with death, scaring their children. It's just not it's just something that we do. We have a European like death culture. Even after people pass away, we have like a trick or treating thing that we do at the cemetery. So when you are Orthodox, there is like a tradition that we have that when we go to the cemetery and we go to each grave. It's not on Halloween. It's a special day. It's like a Day of the Dead almost. It's like a Dia de los Muertos, but for like Orthodox and like Eastern European people. And we go around to each gravestone, and each family member who's that of the respective person that's buried there gives you like either a shot if you're a like a if you're a grown up, like if you're a grown up, or if you drink, or they give you like candy. And I remember going as a kid, I remember thinking it was so fucking weird because like I'd been exposed to death a lot, tons, because our family was very open about death. Polish people like to take pictures of their dead, and like I find a lot of Eastern European people like to do that because I think that was like a custom a long time ago to kind of send back to the old country to prove that, hey, this person actually died. So a long time ago, people were taking pictures of their family members because funerals weren't really done like they are, like even in the old country now. Funerals are not done like they are today. They keep the person at home, and so this is a picture I'm going to share with you. Oh, God. Lord help me. I'm sorry, Mom. This is a funeral back in the old country. I want you to tell me what year you think that this is. So this is my grandfather's sister who is in the casket here, and this is how we keep our dead at home. We keep our people around. So we got my aunt is in the foreground here. This is my great aunt in the casket. My aunt's in the foreground there, and her sons are there. They're past. They're past now. They've all had heart attacks. Actually, big drinking over there. That's one another reason I do not drink the alcohol. Those two babushkas in the back do not know what the fuck is going on. They're like, what the fuck's going on? They don't know what's going on. So this is definitely the most horrifying picture that I've ever seen. I don't know about you. My grandfather showed me this picture. My opa, my mom's dad, showed me this picture when I was like 5 or 6 years old. He's like, "Hey, Tanya, you want to see a picture of my sister?" I'm like, "Sure, I want to see a picture of your sister." Whoosh. He whips this out. Oh my god. What we got here? What about the families that put someone? So Bearded Metal Chef is saying, what about the families that put someone that's passed in like whatever pose they were comfortable in, like playing poker or basketball or something? Basketball? That's going to be a hard one once the rigor mortis sets in. But totally, like someone doing something they were comfortable, like having like a deck of cards, like over their themselves. Obviously, my great aunt really liked herbs. I think maybe I don't know. I don't know what she liked, but they all look really confused like in that picture. This picture, I'm going to tell you, no one has guessed the year. This was 1985. No word of a lie. I sent this picture to my friend the other day who I talked about it with on a podcast. I was on Roadcase podcast a little while back. The Girls from Nice Horse, that band, they run that podcast. That's one of my favorite podcasts actually to listen to. And we talked about this picture, and I sent it recently to some of the girls in the band, and I sent them the back of the photo too, so they knew it was 1985. They're like, man, the old country does not screw around. So we don't fuck around in the old country when it comes to death. So, like I say, in European culture, we're obsessed with death. I grew up with, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and, and things like that. But then I got this very unhealthy obsession as a very young child with the Donnellys. See, James would have guessed that it was the 1920s. Yes. The picture looks something like it would be circa 1920s with the way the photography looks. It's black and white, the way the clothing is. It, like, seriously, it's hilarious. Like it's not hilarious that someone's dead in the picture. It's just absolutely ridiculous how old it looks. It just looks like such an ancient picture. And even as a kid, I didn't know that was like a couple years ago. When my grandfather showed me this, I was like, this was like 1990. I was like 5. So I didn't think, oh, this happened 5 years ago. I'm like, oh, this is a really old picture from the old country. So this brought on unhealthy obsessions and natural obsessions with death and dying and scary things. So there was this book over at my grandparents' house, and it had the Donnellys on it, and it had one of the Donnellys on it. Now the Donnellys, we're going to talk about that right now. It had this man. His face was covered in flames, and it said the Donnelly murders. And that is something I became very obsessed with. It was something that happened in 19th century Ontario that became very, very famous. So in 1940, I would say, oh, I'm going to get a picture of the book up here. I'm going to get a picture of the book up here for you. This is the book that horrified me. This is the book that I read at a very, very young age and became obsessed with subsequently with the Donnelly murders and the Donnelly murder case, researching it, reading the books, looking at like archival things, looking at archival evidence that was in the trial with the Donnellys. This is a very, very famous case you have to understand in southwestern Ontario. And this happened down the road in Lucan, Ontario. I mean, Lucan's a very, very small town. Was a very Irish Catholic town. This happened right on the Roman line, named after Roman Catholics. So, I mean, we're going to start from the beginning. In 1940, Jim and Joanna Donnelly, they came over to Canada from Tipperary, Ireland, with their infant son. And within 6 years, they would have 6 more boys and a girl. They came over here and they kind of squatted on the land. And the land when they came over here was completely like there was just trees. They squatted on land they would eventually turn into a farm and a homestead, but it was just trees. So they had to clear the land. So they spent a lot of time farming because over in Ireland there had been a lot of famine, there had been a lot of political unrest, and eventually Jim just was kind of like sick of things over there, was thrown off their land in Ireland. So they thought maybe we could have a better go of it in Canada. So they came over to Ontario, and they were really pushed out of London, pushed far, because London was really colonized by British people, English people, and Scottish people. So it was Protestant basically in London. So you want to talk about those kinds of politics, religion, blah, blah, they were Catholic. So they were pushed into Lucan. And so Lucan was kind of like the outcast for them. So already in Tipperary and in Ireland, they had already been kind of pegged as rough people, because where they were from in Tipperary, there was a lot of fights and there was a lot of, shit going down over there. They had a reputation of being rough already. They just got here, but a lot of kind of Catholic people kind of had to band together that were in Lucan and get together and make friends with themselves at the St. Patrick's Parish at the church, and kind of put the Catholic people together as they could form kind of like an alliance, because they had to stick together out there because they were just squatting on land. Eventually, Jim and Johanna, they, with their children, as soon as they were, old enough to walk, they were farming the land, and they cleared enough to make a beautiful farmland. They started off with, crops, and they got into horse trading and then some stagecoach business, which earned them a lot of money. They, and a lot of status, but they had a reputation for being a little bit wild and unruly. Lucan was the roughest town in Ontario at this time because, I mean, 7 Donnelly boys, they were known as womanizers, they were known as drinkers and dancers, but they were prosperous, you know what I mean? They were making a lot of money, and people didn't like that. They didn't love it. They weren't in love with the fact that, these Donnelly boys were making this much money. And I mean, they had competition. Now they had competition, and they already had enemies for themselves. Like, they had made enemies for themselves the minute they came over here. Just because they were the way they were, people had a tendency to kind of blame things on the Donnellys. And it's hard to kind of swallow that that's how the blame got slid onto them. Now, the wife, I think it's really important to point out that the wife, Johanna Donnelly, she and Jim created this farm from raw wilderness. They did this while raising 7 boys and 1 girl, Jenny. And Jim was actually convicted of murder in 1855 and actually served 7 years for it. That's the dad. He murdered a guy with a spike. He had to share some land with a gentleman, and he didn't want to share the land with him. So a judge decided that because Jim had been squatting on this land for so long, and this other gentleman wanted the land, that the judge said, okay, you're going to have to split the land, which was a decision that pissed everybody off. So one day they were doing some land harvesting and crop harvesting and land clearing and things like that. I think when you burn brush and such, and they got into it. They were drinking, and the fists started flying, and old Jim Donnelly grabbed a big spike, and he drove it into this guy, and it was a fatal blow, unfortunately, and it fucking killed the guy. So Jim was convicted of murder in 1855. 7 years. He went on the run for a year and left this woman alone with all of these fucking kids. So all these boys had to come of age with their mom by themselves for 7 years. Now, for 1 year, Jim Donnelly, the dad, hid. He hid on the farmland on the property, and he'd often borrow the mother's dress so he can kind of dress and drag and make sure the crops were doing okay in the field. They'd often see, like, the neighbors would report, they'd often see like a husky like woman in the crops just out in the fields, man and everything. Yeah, it's nuts. I know, right? James is just pointing out the fact that it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Like, it's nuts that he went on the run, but then for 6 like other years she had to raise the boys and this girl by herself. So she was known as the matriarch of the family, very, very strong. She had to be a strong woman to put up with all these boys, but they were bringing him food in the fields. They brought him clothes, things that he needed, but Jim lived with a horrible, horrible rage that obviously he couldn't control. He liked to drink, and it obviously got the best of him one night. So that was the gentleman that he killed. His name was Patrick Farrell, and he served 6 of the 7 years in jail that he was convicted of killing him for. So I mean, his credibility started going out the window. The Donnellys' credibility started going out the window, and people just started blaming bad shit that happened in the town on the Donnellys, especially a real jerk named Constable James Carroll. I'm just going to put that out there. He was like an anti-Donnelly guy from like the beginning. He just wanted to drive the Donnellys out of town. He was a real shit disturber. He became a cop so he could kind of drive the Donnellys out of town. He was part of this anti-Donnelly group that was all kind of done through the church, which I'll talk about later, with Father John Connolly. And he just wanted them out of the town so bad. There were so many people that wanted them out of the town. There was John Kennedy, who wanted the Donnellys out of the town because one of the Donnelly brothers had married his sister, and he just couldn't believe his sister had the audacity to marry one of them Donnelly boys after what their dad had done, and the murder, and all the things that they were doing. Now, with the stagecoach business, there was shit going down. People were really pissed at, number one, the Donnellys were Roman Catholics. So number one, when it comes to Roman Catholics, like I say, they were sticking together, and they were all hanging out together, and they were congregating together and looking out for each other. The Donnellys started to do business and stagecoach business with Protestants. And this pissed off the Catholics. So already that was a mark against them. They fucking hated that. The Catholics were pissed. They're like, so they're turning. I don't know if They should have been pissed, or they should have been like, this is progressive. Maybe they're building a bridge between the Protestants and the Catholics. Maybe they were trying to do something progressive. I don't know. I'm trying to look at it from another way, but and kind of like flip a coin. But I will say that I'm just going to look at my notes here. There were stagecoach races between the Donnelly boys and some other boys that they ran like a rival stagecoach company. And one night, one of the Donnelly boys ran one of the rival boys off of the road, and a stagecoach wheel ran over him, and subsequently it killed him. So then they went for another they went for another a ride, and one of the Donnelly boys got ran off the road. It didn't kill him, but all these things contributed to more hate towards the Donnellys. Things were happening in town. People's barns were getting burned down. People's animals were getting poisoned. But the thing is that people don't understand is this shit was happening to the Donnellys too. This stuff was happening to everybody. So the Donnellys were suffering this fate. Neighbors and people and friends were suffering this fate. They didn't have really many friends at this time. They were kind of running out of people. They already looked, less credible because they were starting fights and drinking, and there was lore about them that the boys were like, 7 feet tall, and they were giants, and they were kicking everybody's ass and, banging everybody's chicks, and you know what I mean? But I think a lot of it really came with lore, because from the things that I've read, especially by like James Reaney Sr., if you can get anything written by him about the Donnellys, he's an amazing historian. He's now passed from London, Ontario, and playwright. And he got me really interested in the Donnellys, just reading things that he had written about them. He's a good historian. There are other historians that actually started writing about the Donnellys really early. But I've read like trial accounts. I've read everything about the Donnellys. But what you don't know is things started happening with the Donnellys, and around 1880, people had started getting kind of like sick of the Donnellys. And they decided through the church, because Father John Connolly, who ran St. Patrick's Parish, said, why don't we, instead of fighting these Donnellys, like, let's make a peace treaty. And we got everyone to sign it. And the guy who signed it, the guy who was like the most anti-Donnelly guy ever, James Carroll, Constable James Carroll, signed it. And I think maybe the priest thought he was doing a good thing at the time by encouraging peace between himself and the church, and making amends with the Donnellys. However, Father John Connolly did preside over the church and call out the Donnellys like by name in church and say, they were blaming them for things. They were calling them scapegoats and saying that they were going to burn in hellfire for the shit that they had done. And I think a few of the parishioners, especially the people that were in this lynch mob, as I will call it, as that's what all the historians call it as well, I think they took it a little bit too fucking literally, because on the night of February 3rd, 1880, and I walked this today. I walked the route that they would have taken down the Roman line to kill the Donnellys, and it was fucking creepy, man. Because the Roman line, like I say, is in Lucan, and it's to name all the Roman Catholic people that lived there. There's a few like lines there, but that one is one, and it still stays. It's right by the church, right off the main highway there. So a bunch of these people got together. John Kennedy was one of them. James Carroll, Constable James Carroll, was one of them. They think that Patrick Farrell was one of them, because there was someone, an eyewitness, who saw these people. Actually, there were 2 eyewitnesses, but we'll get to that later. So first, they had to go to the first Donnelly homestead, and like they went medieval on their ass. Constable James Carroll singled out Tom Donnelly, and this wakes all of them up in the house. Now, James Sr., Jim Donnelly, like the dad, is sleeping. Johanna is there. And they've got a little family friend over, and his name is Johnny O'Connor. He's a little boy. I always call him Billy Connolly because I love Billy Connolly. But it's obviously not Billy Connolly. Johnny O'Connor was there. And he decided he was going to hide under the bed. So he hides under the bed as they hear like a knock on the door. A candle goes out at midnight exactly. And Johnny O'Connor hides under the bed. A knock comes at the door and they're calling them out by name. They're calling them to come out to the front lawn. And they don't want to come outside. So finally, they hear a scream. Constable James Carroll, from what the account is from Johnny O'Connor, runs into the house, screams, and then this wakes James Sr. They handcuff Tom because they know he's the strongest, biggest of the Donnellys. Tom Donnelly is like the brick motherfucking house of the Donnelly family. And if he's going to defend anyone, it's going to be his mom and his dad who he's with. And they have a cousin with them from Ireland, a young girl. And of course, this little boy, Johnny, who was amazingly a key eyewitness. But we'll talk about that later. So Johnny hides as the family goes into the kitchen. Then as a yell signals, a whole bunch of murderous mob just kind of runs in and beats the shit out of the Donnellys. They just beat them absolutely senseless. They beat them mostly to death. This child has to like step over bodies as he's getting out as they're leaving, but they want to cover their tracks. So what do? They spread coal oil. And I mean, that's what they used to like heat houses with. They used to use coal furnaces and use coal oil. Now we use coal on trains and stuff like that, but they set this house ablaze to hide the bodies. And I mean, these bodies were absolutely incinerated. When the police came the next day, some of the skulls were so badly burned they just crumbled into ashes. But five Donnellys passed away. Little Johnny got out and he ended up going to like a neighboring farm. So after leaving one like Donnelly farm ablaze, this lynch mob decided to head to the second homestead where the Donnellys were, where William Donnelly was and his wife lived, and John Donnelly lived there as well. This is around 2 a.m. Fire, 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 fire. They yelled to William to come out. They could see like a fire outside. I don't know if they had pitchforks or what they had going on, or they had fire on sticks. I know they had guns. There were reports of weapons, repeating firing arms. This is 1880, so guns weren't totally progressive, like and totally well developed yet. But there were lots of firearms back then. So it was still 1880. Lots of guns were killing people, so they wanted William, but accidentally John got up and went outside, and they killed him. They popped him dead, but it was so dark they thought that they had killed they thought that they killed William, but they got John. So that was 5 family members dead in the Donnelly family within 24 hours. It was fast, and Johnny O'Connor had all this testimony. He'd seen it. And obviously, William had gone to the window, too, after his brother had been killed to see if he could recognize any of the faces. And, of course, he did. Who did he see? He saw Constable James Carroll. He saw a few people that he knew. And he recognized them. And he put that in the back of his mind. Funerals were had. Trial was set. But no one wanted to come forward with any information about the Donnellys. I mean, who the fuck would? You come forward with information, someone's going to come to your house with a lynch mob and burn your barn down or burn your house down. So, nobody really wanted to fuck with that. In 1880, in London, Ontario, they had 6 men in custody. They started with a trial. They had to actually get rid of the first jury because they were garbage and could not come to an agreement. We had Johnny O'Connor and William Donnelly as the sole witnesses on the stand who could recognize people. And they've reconstructed this crime to this day, and it's legit. But I will tell you, to this day, they have never ever found, they got a second jury. And the second jury chickened the fuck out because Constable James Carroll was found absolutely not guilty of anything. He was acquitted because who wants to convict a cop? So the second jury chickened the fuck out. He didn't get any kind of punishment for this. It was bullshit. No justice for the Donnellys. And everyone thought justice would be served. Hi, Scott. Yeah, it's true. Holy moly. James says, holy moly. He's going to have to check out more about the Donnelly story. Yeah, when you get down the rabbit hole of the Donnelly story, it's crazy. Here we have there's a museum right on the main strip in Lucan, Ontario. You can go right down there, and I don't know if it's open right now. I didn't go in today because I think you probably have to like put on a mask and go in there, and I don't even know if it was open. I had the kids in the car. They wanted to see the museum and the Donnelly thing, so we went in the car for a little tour around some of the things because there's like people hanging around. Nobody in the cemetery though. Nobody wanted to be in the cemetery. So the Donnellys was always something that absolutely fascinated me. And I think personally that the crime with the Donnellys, the thing that's the most tragic about it is that I think it was more of a crime of miscommunication with people than it was a crime of like actual like hate. This hate came out of miscommunication. This hate came out of people not talking to one another, people not telling each other how they felt. They just fought. This whole big feud could have been avoided if people weren't fighting with each other. And I'm not saying it's because like alcohol was involved or this was involved or that, but like feelings were involved. These people could have been like logical and talk this shit out. No, they had to beat the shit out of each other and set each other's fucking houses on fire. So all these people had to die. And now I went to, like I say, to the Donnelly's gravesite today. Now the original headstone is not at the actual gravesite in the St. Patrick's burial yard there in the boneyard. It's in the museum because the original one actually says that they were murdered on the epitaph on the gravestone. So now it's changed to birth dates and death dates, and you can see all their birth dates and death dates there if you go. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend when you get a chance and it's safe, you head down to Lucan and give them some commerce for their town there. They had a 6 months in Lucan actually where all kinds of barns caught on fire. It was called the Reign of Terror and the Reign of Death. You can check that out. People's if you don't believe me, Google it. People's barns and houses were set on fire, including the Donnellys. This is why I'm saying, like, maybe it wasn't the Donnellys that were causing all this shit after all. From the stuff that I've read about them, they don't sound like they were horrible people. They just sound like they became the scapegoats for a lot of shit. And that happens to a lot of people. It happens. So now we're going to travel. We're going to take a little trip to somewhere else that has a London, but it's England. We're going to actually go to Suffolk in England, and we're going to talk about the Woolpits Green children that were found in a cave. Now, this happened in 12th century Great Britain, in Great Britain, where the Queen lives. No, but really, this was a story that I also got from my mom. It was this book that I had when I was a kid, a big blue hardcover book called Mysteries of the Unexplained, and it used to scare the fucking shit out of me. And I had this picture. I brought it on tour the first time I went out with Kitty, and Morgan and I used to like leaf through it, and we found this story about the Green Children, and they were called the Woolpits Green Children, and they were found, like I say, in 12th century Great Britain, well, under the rule of King Stephen. This is like medieval fucking times for England, okay? This is a weird story. Farming and developing in this time in England was kind of a way of life because they were actually run under something called feudalism. If you don't know what that is, it means 10% of all your ching chang money, cash, ching chang, it's going in the register for, you know who that sounds going to? The church. 10% of it is going to the church. Cha-ching, cha-ching, feudalism. That's feudalism for you. So these small villages were giving all their money to the church, but there were a few small villages that remained untouched by the church, and they were more true to older traditions. Now, one of these villages was actually subject to the sudden appearance of two children, and these two children had green skin, like a light green skin. Now, it was strange. It was a boy and it was a girl, and they just appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Now, there are two accounts of the story. One said because they came to Woolpit, which was in Suffolk, like I say, in England. Woolpit was actually named for this town because they had these big holes that were actually wolf pits for wolves to fall into so they wouldn't attack people. So one story was that they were found in the bottom of a wolf pit in Woolpit. And the other story is that they were found in the opening of a cavern or the opening of a cave by water. And like I say, everyone has accounted that they have green skin. There are accounts from 1198 and there's accounts for in the 1220s as well, and each historian has almost the exact same account of what happened. They say this could have happened between the years 1135 and 1154. Like I say, there's two versions by these major chroniclers. They're documented as fact. These people call this fact that these green children standing here in a cavern with strange clothes. So their clothing was described as very strangely colored. They looked desaturated. They spoke in an unknown language. They refused food until, this is really weird because beans were actually just coming to 12th century Europe at this time, and like legumes and things like that. They were offered food all the time until they were offered fava beans. That's actually supposed to be funny because it's Halloween in a nice candy. No, until they were actually offered fava beans, they wouldn't eat anything. So they'd just been cultivated in that part of Europe. So they were taken in by a man named Richard de Calne, Frenchman, and they ate fava beans, and they started getting a little bit healthier. He taught them English. He helped them expand their diets a little bit more, so they weren't just eating beans all the time. Their skin turned a different color other than green. They looked a little bit more healthy. But then they started to reveal, especially the girl, they started to reveal a little bit more about where they'd been and where they're from, themselves, their origin, where they were going, where they had already been, what was kind of going on. And it's one account from the sister. She told Richard that they came from a place, I'm reading this here, where the sun didn't shine and the sky always looked like twilight. She said the sky always looked like it was night, and like stars in the sky, and always looked like twilight, like the stars were like made of like powder, like stardust. And then another account, the world was described as all green, but is separated by a river that led to another land that she called St. Martin's Land. Now, she couldn't exactly tell you where this was geographically, but she said it was generally Christian and had a lot of churches. And in one moment, both children accounted that they were actually followed by their cows into a new world. They were herding the cows. One cow went somewhere, another cow went another place. They followed the cows followed them, and they ended up in the mouth of the cave in a new world. The cows were gone, and they don't know where their original world was. They were farming one day with their dad, and one account was that a mysterious wind came and picked them up, and they woke up in the bottom of this wolf pit. So eventually, following the years that Richard took care of these kids, he had them baptized. And unfortunately, after he had them baptized, I don't know if this is just a weird fluky thing, but the boy passed away after a few years. But the girl, they ended up naming her Agnes. She actually ended up marrying a judge and a clergyman who was very, very, it sounds like aliens, Scott. Like, it does sound like aliens. Like, it sounds like they came from another planet, like another dimension. So when I think of it and the green skin, I think of aliens, green, gray skin, looking really desaturated, having a strange diet. Yeah, Scott's absolutely 100%. I'm not saying it was aliens. And Scott's not saying it was aliens, but maybe it was aliens. Like all the way back into like 1198, they were accounting for this. And this really scared the shit out of people. It scares the shit out of me now. If you can get your hands on a copy of Mysteries of the Unexplained, it's a hardcover book. It's got like things about the Loch Ness Monster on there. Also something I'm completely fascinated about. There's a Creepshow episode out right now. It's got a Loch Ness Monster-esque episode on it. It's like on the back end of an episode. One's about these like fat-sucking leeches, and the other is about this like Nessie type creature. Highly recommended if you have Shudder. If you don't, fucking get it. It's like $10 a month. God damn it, I wish I could buy the world Shudder, but I can't. If you tell your friends about my podcast and you know what, more people subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'll buy you all fucking Shudder. Send the check, Shudder. Send a check so all the people who see that this YouTube live can just enjoy the love that is Creepshow. In other news that's not scary, obviously I got my Halloween costume. Rob has got his Halloween costume. The kids are decked out. We've got more pumpkins. We went past a place today. It was lovely. It was actually awesome. They had a big stand out, and there's no one out there. It was just out in the middle of nowhere, and it said, "Today only, free pumpkins." I'm like, that's fucking awesome. That is lovely. So I went, and because I still felt like I was doing something like illegal. Like it felt fucking wrong. I'm like, I want to leave some people like money, but I didn't have any cash on me. There was no debit machine. There was nothing where I could leave anything. I got some pumpkins though. They had a whole field that they're trying to get rid of, and they're like rotting in their field. But they're beautiful on the stand. So I got a whole shitload of pumpkins. The kids love pumpkins. They love pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are good for you. They're full of zinc and selenium. All those fucking things. They're great for, especially for men. Zinc is good for your sex drive, for anyone. Zinc, especially this season. You want to watch out for that seasonal affective disorder. You want to get yourself a pink lamp. I got lots of friends starting podcasts this week. My friend Rowan's starting one. I'm excited to listen to that. I just heard Daniel Johns' new podcast. Apparently, there's a third episode out now. I've listened to the first and second one. Those brought tears to my eyes. I had to listen to them by myself because I need to cry a little bit. They just kind of brought things back to being young and being able to relate to that. So Daniel Johns' podcast, if you haven't heard who is Daniel Johns yet, highly recommended. I was on the Roadcase podcast not too long ago. And if you haven't heard not that episode yet, if you've heard not it, it's because we're talking about England. If you've heard not it, check it out. Steve, I had dinner in a pumpkin on Thursday. I need this explained to me. How on earth did you have dinner in a pumpkin? Inside of a pumpkin? I bet you it was like a pumpkin. We have a place in Coburg, Ontario called the Big Apple, and you can go inside that. Maybe you guys have a big pumpkin over there that you ate inside of. I don't know how the hell your ass got inside a pumpkin. I don't know. I've been jamming out in other news, doing lots of jingly jangly metal. I've been doing metal with tambourines. I wanted to know. I always kind of wanted to hear what metal with tambourines sounded like, and now I know, and now I'm addicted to it. So I've been doing a little bit of that, laying some scratch tracks. That's been fun. Bread Ninja started again. It actually started with tragedy, unfortunately. A childhood friend of mine lost a pet. Long story short, family is absolutely devastated. I have an obvious soft spot for animals. I don't even consume them. However, I do make a lot of bread. And if you can't break bread with someone in person, like what do I say? Like we're still in pandemic mode here. What can you do? You can break bread with them, and it's always kind to do. So I left a thing of bread on their porch and kind of left the dad a Facebook message and said, there's something on your porch. And he kind of left me a message that said, Tanya, we didn't feel like eating anything for like days after this happened. And then suddenly this magical comfort food showed up on our porch, and suddenly we had appetites for bread and butter and jam. So that made me sublimely happy, and has been keeping me going, running on sunshine. Now I'm going to get the explanation from Steve on what happened. You carve them out, shave them, and fill it up with mushrooms, cream of mushroom, beef and cooked bacon grease, and butter on the outside. So this was a recipe. You didn't actually, you stuffed a pumpkin and ate it. That's awesome. I would do that. I would put some Beyond Meat in it for me. Oh my God, that sounds awesome. Now, Steve has cooked his in bacon grease. I can absolutely say that this would probably be absolutely delicious because I love to cook. So if I was going to make this for my family, they are still meat eaters as well. I would cook it in bacon grease too. I'd probably wrap the whole goddamn thing in bacon. For me, I have to wrap it in fake and bacon now, obviously, because I'm doing the vegan thing. I'm loving it though. Family, not so much. Rob loves it. The kids are like, this is vegan. They just like pass it back to me. So they're not into it, but whatever. At least I've converted my husband. I even save bacon fat to this day. When I was young, I used to save bacon fat in a jar. We call it schmaltz. I used to put it on toast. You got it right, Steve. Like we all have our bacon fat. We all save our bacon fat. You got to save it. It's important. It is like a very important cooking tool for a lot of people. I'm serious. It's good as butter. I save mine. I cook with it. I'm not going to lie. Not for myself personally, but people love it. We call it schmaltz. I used to spread on toast when I was a young kid. I put a piece of rye bread, put some solidified bacon grease on it. I loved it. Oh my God. So today, obviously, on my Instagram page, you got a little bit of sneak peek of what you're going to be able to see on Patreon, which is coming up soon. All kinds of fun things coming down the pipe for you. But I wanted to just hang out with you on this Devil's Night, dressed in a ridiculous fucking Elvis. I look like Viva Las Vegas. Got some vegan Lost Whoppers waiting for me when I'm done this live stream. But if you want to find me, you know where I am. I am on Instagram always. I'm a slave to that gram at 21st Century Rocker Mom. You can find me on TikTok at 21st Century Rocker Mom as well. You can find me on this YouTube channel at Tanny Candler Channel. And if you click subscribe and you hit the little bell, ding, 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 you'll get a notification when I go live every 2 weeks. Maybe I'll go live every week. Who knows? But if you hit that bell, you'll fucking know because then you'll get the notification. Oh shit, how smart are you for hitting that fucking button? And if you just go to at Tanya Candler, I'm on Twitter, tweeting my ass off, tweedledee, like rockin' fucking Robin. Just on Twitter, having a great time. You know what? James, you're right. Pumpkin dinner sounds awesome. I agree. Pumpkin dinner does sound awesome, Stephen. I think that James is going to make pumpkin dinner now, too. I think that'd be awesome. I want to put some, like, you guys are making me think of, like, pumpkin beard oil. Beard oil things are coming down the pipe as well. I know I keep saying this, but I've been having some like private conversations with my bushy faced friends, and I can't wait to share some of this too. Oh God, I'm so happy about it. Steven's adding that his wifey kills the food game, keeping me so fat no one else wants your old fat ass. Well, big, beautiful bearded men. Like we're gonna make that hashtag. BBBM. We gotta like normalize big, beautiful bearded men. Don't say you have a fat ass and beat up on yourself. That's not cool. Why don't we normalize being big, beautiful bearded men? We'll normalize being who you are. How's that? We'll do that until next week. And I talk to you again. Thank you all for showing up and hanging out with me on this Devil's Night and hanging out with fake Jenny Lewis, because the real Jenny Lewis is hanging out, obviously, with Harry Styles. If you're one of those Generation XYZers, I don't know what comes after Generation Z. We're just back to the beginning of the alphabet again. But I will see you for the next episode of 21st Century Rocker Mom. It was lovely to hang out with you. I love you. Until next week, my pretties. Junk in the trunk. What are you going to do with all that junk? All that junk up in that trunk.